Sam?
This, of course, is off topic.
Okay.
But Mayor, obviously, we've been looking at the situation there on Rhode Island Avenue with the district dogs. You were there last year, as I recall, looking at the situation. And there's some question as to whether, everybody did what they were supposed to in that crisis. What are some of your thoughts? What can you tell the public about this?
Sure. First, I'm going to ask Director Rodriguez to kind of give you an overview about the devastating flood that we saw on Rhode Island Avenue and talk specifically about that incident and flood conditions more generally. Chris?
Thank you, Mayor Bowser, and good afternoon, everyone. First, what I'd like to just say is express, of course, heartfelt condolences to the families who lost their pets on that day. As a dog owner myself who lost our dog about 3 weeks ago, as a member of the family, I can feel the devastation of losing a family member. What happened the other day, a couple days ago, was one of the events and weather events that we have now been experiencing in our city for a few years, and in particular this summer. If you look at the events, the weather events, severe, that we have seen this summer, over 100-degree days for multiple days in a row. The July 29th storm in Ward 3. And of course what we saw the other day, we are experiencing the impacts of climate change. There's no question to that. And the other day, what we saw was a massive amount of rainfall in a very short period of time. And unfortunately, the impacts of climate change are also making these weather systems pop up very quickly and with little to no warning as cold and warm fronts sort of hit each other mostly towards the end of the day and drop massive amounts of precipitation and lightning and thunder on our city and our surrounding jurisdictions. Around a little bit before 2 o'clock, we received notification from the National Weather Service of a system that was rapidly forming to our west, a little bit west of I-81. And what the Weather Service told us is that that system would be making its way to our region. So a flood watch was put in effect. Immediately, what we do at the Homeland Security Emergency Management Agency with the District Watch is to make sure that those notifications go out, and they go out to the public. When the system then moved its way towards our area, a warning was put into effect by the National Weather Service of an impending lot of rain. And so once that system hit us, again, once we see in some of the interior areas of the city that amount of rain fall very quickly. They were anticipating up to 3 inches per hour. Now think about it in terms of if you were to take a cup and put a hole on the bottom of it, and you're going to pour water very slowly into the cup, it'll drain. But if you're going to pour a liter full of water into that cup, it'll sit until it drains out. Okay? And what we saw there in the Rhode Island Avenue area was a massive amount of rain falling very quickly. Now, fortunately, our fire and EMS professionals were there at Engine 12 on scene very quickly, reacted very quickly as the water started to rise, and saved some of the folks who were caught in their cars. And what we're going to do is continue to really look at how climate change is impacting our city and our preparations for these types of severe weather events, which will continue. And we will continue to see these types of events throughout the year, whether they be in the summer, the fall, or in the winter. So with that, Mayor, that's sort of the update on sort of what we saw the other day.
Thank you. Yes.
So that area, though, particular to where District Dogs is, everyone knows that it's experienced significant flooding in the past. DC Water said that their tunnel project was expedited after the issue in 2012. After last year's major flood, though, at that location, why wasn't the certificate of occupancy revoked, or why was that business allowed to continue there when it was known that that was a problematic area? And did any officials warn the business owner or the builders before that structure went up that that was a major flooding area there?
Well, I don't. Perhaps we can. I think Chris talked a little bit about the kind of the characteristics of this storm versus last year. And Sam, you're right. I was on the scene last year for flooding there, which is nothing like what we saw yesterday. Nothing like what we saw yesterday. And so I'm going to ask Brian Hanlon, who is our DOB official, to talk about what is the building and what's allowed there.
Thank you, Mayor. Thanks. And I'll echo my condolences for the families that lost their beloved pets. The building was designed and permitted in accordance with codes, the codes that are in place now. After last year's event, the building was re-inspected and deemed safe in accordance with the current code. And the owner took occupancy. There was a recommendation at the time for them to consider purchasing the barricades that were actually put in place. Those were 30 inches high and were sufficient for the volume of water that occurred in last year's storm. Certainly not for what just happened, as the mayor just said. Thank you.
Yes. Speaking of the drains in that area, though, the owner did previously tweet out to city leaders, including your account as well, asking for the drains to be inspected, that there had been previous rains where it was still clogging up, and had asked DC Water if that was done. The council members also asking, were any
that may
inspections
be, Stephanie,
done?
but it really wouldn't have had an impact. What we're trying to explain to you is that it wouldn't have had an impact on yesterday's rains. So I can't.
It was Monday first.
May I finish?
Okay.
So I can't speak specifically to that tweet or the drains. You can expect us to be able to say more. We're in the early stages of evaluating and analysis and support for the business. So this won't be a full explanation of what needs to happen, but that's where we are now. We had a torrential rain, a very short period of time, and that's what we can say at this point. Yes.
Lay out the timeline of the response. Councilmember Zachary Parker told all of us yesterday that he believes, one, he said this was a citywide failure, what happened at District Dogs, and then he called into question the response by first responders compared to when the original 911 calls came in, and said that there was a 15-minute delay. I know I'm sure other reporters have requested a copy of the CAD report to see what time calls started coming in and what time trucks were dispatched to that location, and we know that Engine 12 self-dispatched and was taking care of people in their cars. But at what point did DC Fire realize people were trapped inside the building? At what point did 911 operators know people were trapped inside the building? And what was the time in between those when 911 knew? Because we understand that that Tower 3 was dispatched for a leak and then told to turn back by the incident commander, and then eventually the incident commander deployed a raft to District Dogs. So can somebody lay out that timeline for us?
Yes, but I don't think that we can lay it out in front of you right now. But what I want to be real clear about is that Fire EMS was on the scene almost immediately because they were in the area. And so I can't talk to you about how many personnel or when they noticed that in addition to cars that needed evacuation assistance, that the nearby business also did, but all of that was happening at the same time.
With all due respect, why can't you tell us? Director Rodriguez, have you listened to the 911 calls? I note that the OUC director is not here. Certainly she's listened to the 911 calls by now. Has she told either you or the director what was told to the 911 operators? Was the sense of dire emergency conveyed by the people calling 911? I mean, it's been 48 hours. Somebody has to have done a preliminary.
Sure, and so we, in another setting, Mark, would be happy to go with you kind of line by line or minute by minute, but we won't be able to do that today. But what I want to reiterate is that Fire EMS was on the scene almost immediately because they were in the area.
They were on the scene under the underpass rescuing people who needed to be rescued from cars. When did they arrive at District Dog's doorstep? When did they go into District Dog's? It sounds like a pretty basic question that the director of HCMA should know the answer to.
We can go over a timeline with you at a later time. Yeah.
Mayor Bowser, we were there last year with you when we did the walk. Obviously, that commercial space was not there before. I heard you that it was deemed safe and was there. Is there any doubt that that building should even be there in that commercial space at this point after 4 flooding incidents?
We are certainly evaluating that, and we will be making some decisions around that.
And following up on that, any response as the district dog owner says he's not coming back, obviously, following that, what would you say to him, obviously, after this 4th time of flooding and obviously this horrible tragedy?
Well, it's a horrible, obviously, he was entrusted to care for people's pets, and I know he's devastated. I know those families are devastated. I expect to be meeting with him to, discuss his status and how we can be helpful. Yes, ma'am.
Councilmember Parker said yesterday that he feels the city bears responsibility. Do you agree with him?
I'm not here to respond to that. Yep. Yes.
Mayor, House Republicans are proposing to basically do away with home rule. What is your reaction?
We've heard these threats before, Sam, and I think we feel very strongly that the discussion should not be about dismissing home rule, but making D.C. the 51st state. And until we become a state, we always are subject to the whims of legislators not elected by us, and we have to continue to stay focused on that. All right, I'll take a few more. Anybody? Yes.
Mayor, we know that we cannot control the weather, we cannot control the storms, but what the city could do for try to avoid flooding in this area again?
Well, I want to ask DC Water to come up and talk about the project that they've been working on, but also we're all going to have a discussion about what more can be done, especially in that area, which we know is prone to flooding. As many people have said, it's flooded for many years, but not like that. Even last year when we thought it was a terrible situation, not like we saw the other day. And so we all have to be sure that we're hardening the city as much as possible. Residents and business owners are getting as much information as they can. And any engineering fixes beyond the incredible investments that we've already made are also on the table. So let me ask David Gaddis from DC Water to explain the upcoming opening of the project, which we think might mitigate some of the Rhode Island Avenue issues, but may not have even mitigated this type of storm.
Thank you, Mayor. Let me first of all and up front say that our sympathies go out to the individuals that lost their dogs during this horrific event on Monday, and it was a tragedy, and that those animals lost their lives. But we want to also thank the fire department for what they did in helping out and getting individuals out of those buildings, also dogs as well. But as far as our project goes, the Northeast Boundary Tunnel. Northeast Boundary Tunnel is something that is a project that is ahead of schedule right now, approximately 2 years ahead of schedule. We're in the process of commissioning the Northeast Boundary Tunnel right now. The Northeast Boundary Tunnel was not built though to alleviate flood in the district. It was from an environmental standpoint to assist with the Anacostia and also helping that river come back to life, and it has done that thus far. As the mayor said, the amount of rain that we got the other day, even with the Northeast Boundary Tunnel in play, we're not sure that it would have been able to handle the amount of rain that fell in that 2-3 inches of rain fell within 45 minutes of time, and we're not sure that the Northeast Boundary Tunnel would have been able to sacrifice or take that water out as well. What we have to do is we will commission the Northeast Boundary Tunnel. Once it's commissioned and in play, We will see from the next storm how it performs, and we'll see if it outperforms what we built thus far. But right now, it's built for a 15-year storm. What we got the other day was far beyond a 15-year storm, and so we will continue to work with the mayor and her office as well in trying to make sure that we can help with the flooding in the district as we move forward. Thank you.
Yes, Sam.
Mr. Gaddis, so
may I just see the remaining questions? Okay, Sam and Stephanie, you have the last question. Okay, thank you.
So, Mr. Gaddis, it suggests you're saying there is no system that you could build to guarantee, let's say, that it would handle the water situation at that point. I guess at that bowl at the end of the bottom of the bowl area there.
Well, I won't say that there isn't a system. I will say that the system that we have in place right now is built for a 15-year storm, is what it's built for. But there may be a system that can be built. I can't answer that question.
Sir, I have a question for you as well, but also I do have a question for you, Mayor Bowser. Can you answer the council members' questions for the area? And I emailed with your team yesterday, and it was whether any of the catch basins had been checked before this storm. We also saw your crews out there checking the drains there. Were those checked before the storm as well? Is there any requirement to do so every so often?
They were checked. We constantly are checking the drains in the district, and those drains were checked as well as all drains throughout the district, especially the week before when we thought that a storm was coming. Ended up being a lot of wind versus rain, but they were checked a week before as well. But we constantly check the system and check the drains as well.
Thank you. And Mayor, my question for you, we all reached out to the different city agencies yesterday. We were told we would get a response from Department of Buildings, but didn't yesterday. Is there any reason why we have to wait 2 days after to hear more on what's going on when so much damage was done on Monday?
Well, I'm sure they got and will get back to you when they have complete information. There was one other thing I wanted to add to Sam's question. What was your last question, Sam?
Could be built to handle this.
Yes. So, I appreciate what the general manager has said. That's one thing that we will be pushing all of our teams on, to see if there is some additional engineering fix in and around that intersection. My experience with those is those are long-term capital projects, and so there will obviously have to be short-term attention to keeping the area safe. And we'll develop as many of those mitigation tools as we can. All right. Thank you, everybody.